Hey, Frode.
Hello.
This is wrong.
I was just looking at your website.
Oh, yes, it's. We're going to have a new one up by the beginning of next month. That one is already pretty old. But questions?
Yeah, it looks very good, and of course related to what we discussed. I'm wondering if you want to demo to the group. That would be really, really good.
Yeah, I can do a small demo today. Yesterday we had a meeting with our developers, and we're finalizing the integration of Stripe so people can pay their subscription. But I will show you. I'll show you some things today as how we do it. Let's see.
Let's see who's joining us. I see Gunter is there.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, hello. So we have the problem with our app in the App Store. You know, Author, we made it free, and then export is $15 a year or $45 forever. But nobody has done any upgrades for over a week. And I got one email from a person saying, "Oh my God, I love your software. It's great, great, great. But I tried to upgrade and it's already there. So I don't know what to do." So for some reason, it's just keeping it. And the funny thing is, this does not correlate with a new update. I've been mapping everything out. So there is something strange going on in the middle. So yeah, good luck with Stripe. All of these payment things are tricky.
Yeah. It's well, Stripe seems to be the one that is the most popular to use, and we're finalizing the integration, and then we might end up testing next week and see how it works.
Good, good.
Let me change my resolution.
Alan, what are you doing on here? You're supposed to be working.
That is correct. Surprised. I was surprised that a meeting got canceled, so I thought I would hop on and say hi.
Hello.
If it's a work session, I can jump off.
No. They're all open sessions. I was just teasing you because you were so careful with the timing and stuff.
Yes, no, it's my work life tends to make it impossible to have outside commitments. But today, the greatest gift, by the way, is having a meeting on Friday canceled. It's
Good.
like, so.
Indeed.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, morning.
Good morning.
Where you are in the world.
I think Jerry's joining us. He just couldn't find the link. He sent me a message. So here's a question and a suggestion and all of that to you guys immediately. The community circle thing that we now have, which is costing a ton of money, by the way, we need to start using it.
Yes.
I'm not really sure what that is, other than what you guys are already doing with a couple of posts. So do you have suggestions how we can make it a more active community?
I'm uninitiated to it, so maybe that'll be helpful as a user with questions. What is the goal of it? I mean, versus, like, I love Circle from what I've seen so far, and I can understand from a UX place where it's different than Discord. But is this open-ended or closed?
It's open-ended. Anybody's welcome to join. Those who clearly have a strong interest in the future of text and have some expertise in some area are invited to join in contributing to the next volume of the book. And by the way, it's nice to call it volume 2 rather than edition 2, because I think we're getting enough great people that we can have it as a freestanding volume where all the contributors to the first edition, if they have something new to say, they can also say. But I expect that will be 50% or less, which is good. You know, and then there's you new guys like you, Alan, which is great. As far as the community is concerned, two parallel things. One, who should we invite to join the book? That's a big one. So that allows us to post. Well, initially it was for people to post, but then it became more reasonable that if someone thinks someone should be in the book, tell me, I'll make a decision and we will invite. The only criteria to be invited to the book, as you will see from volume 1, the quality of the submissions are very up and down, is if someone's passionately interested and will make a real commitment, that's enough. Because I don't know what will actually be useful in the long distance future. So I'd much rather have a few skippable entries than, you know, a strongly curated one, at least now.
Yeah, I ended up talking to a friend of mine, Henrique Nardi. I think it's from one of the posts that I put on Circle. And what I've been asking people is that if they have something related to the future of text, right? That was the question you raised. And this one is specifically, Henrique, since he's a professor, he does have some studies related to it. And then I sent him over to the website and the book for him to take a look, see if it's a project that he would be interested in participating.
Right.
And then I'm waiting on his reply. He was grading students. It was like a grading week, so he was kind of busy.
Yeah.
But he promised to take a look at it and see if he finds it interesting.
No, that's great. Thank you. The thing is, there have been a few invitations going out without me being involved. And even though I'm the loosest editor in the world, I do feel it's kind of useful to have a relevancy check.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of it. But also, you know, in the different groups we've all been involved in over the years, there's always been talk of let's do this project or let's do that project. Hopefully here, it's an easy place to show what you're doing, find out what people are doing, and see if there's either collaboration that's possible or just some kind of interoperability. That's really a big deal.
Mm-hmm. I told him that in case he was interested, then I would let you know, and then you would invite him formally.
Yeah, okay, no, that's reasonable. I was just doing the second half of Alan's question of what the community is for. So it's also about that aspect.
I see.
Here's the thing also, we want to have a student competition. We had one for volume 1, we want to have one for volume 2, and we need to market the book. But what, you know, even though I started this and it's my passion and all of that stuff, a lot of the suggestions are we should do this, that, and the other, bye-bye. So it's trying to get people to volunteer to do bits of the work themselves as well. And of course, that's a hard part of community building.
And when you were working up with volume 1, I talked with Ian a good bit about what to write. Ian Neal from Codex. We were actually going to put a piece together, but my job got in the way, or my time management. But one of the central questions, I'm glad we can talk about this, maybe just briefly, maybe this is an offline thing, but there seems to be a kind of core paradox, at least trouble I had with what does the future of text mean? For instance, if it means the future of, like if it's open-ended, obviously then maybe the submissions are too broad, not as compelling. So then if you narrow it down to, no, I'm talking about text, and text as opposed to writing, communication, whatever, you are kind of forcing a future view or a philosophical endpoint, because you're saying, no, I only care about text. But so it's weird because the future of any of this stuff is going to be so blended into each other. It's very difficult to say, when does text become audio? When does audio become text? And how are you going to use either one? You know, they have they're like subway lines.
Right. So the answer on this is also two opposites, because on one hand, there is stuff. If you're interested in images, you know, talk to Adobe. They do amazing tools and things are happening. You know, if you're interested in the future of photography, there are millions of forums out there and so on. I am interested in the future of photography, for one. So on one side, I'm kind of trying to hold a flame for photography, symbols on a screen or some sort of a substrate. But that in itself, which is great, for some of it, it absolutely should be about that. That's all people care about for an essay. That's great, their contribution. But at the same time, there are some people in the book who stretch it far, like Tim Ingold. He hates my ideas of the future of digital text, which is great. So he's written kind of an opposing manifesto stuff.
Sorry, by the way, I'm getting some, just because it's being recorded, I'm getting some feedback in the audio, having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, really? Okay, hang on.
It's more just like white noise. It might not be on your channel. I'm not sure.
Okay. How is my audio different now?
There's a hiss. That's right. Yeah. No, I still hear it.
And Gunther, can you mute, please? Rafael's
Sure.
already muted. Peter's muted. Ah, Gunther, it was you. It's okay. Anyway, so
It's just the background noise. Yeah, go ahead.
So the thing is, I think it is important, and I think we all agree in this community that if someone wants to write something that's quite tangential, quite a completely different tube line, so to speak, subway line, that's fine. I just don't want to have an article saying the future of text, forget it, it's boring, it's going to be video. Here's what videos are, right? Because there is quite a bit of that. And I've already had one unfortunate dialogue with one of the contributors, who's a wonderful person, but who really wanted to stretch text very, very far, where, you know, like in some academic disciplines, you talk about the text of, and it includes everything in that realm, whether it's a paper or whatever. I think that's going a bit far, but we didn't get our discussion long enough to really get something out of it. It should have been something useful, but it became a bit antagonistic and we were both being defensive anyway. So in answer to your question, Alan, my fantasy, even though part of my future is definitely digital, and last time we talked about digital and analog, of course, is to see a student in university with a physical copy of the book that has been read and annotated and shredded. It's just almost just falling off the floor because they found inspirations in it. So I think it's our job to inspire that student, and that may come from all kinds of angles.
I like to
Love
see
it.
the student with two copies, one in mint condition that he keeps as a treasured masterwork, and the other torn, shredded, and beaten up from heavy annotation.
Yeah, good one. We should double our sales figures. So that means, yeah, we sell 2 books.
That's helpful. Thank you. Do you find that the in this fantasy product, or even in fantasy submissions, that there's a kind of common assumptions that the authors have, or that there are things that can be agreed on? Like, for instance, we've had writing for a long time. There's something about writing that is perhaps technology, but perhaps something more, you know, like, do you find that there's a little bit of that gospel, or?
Not really, not really. But one thing that someone did mention in one of our monthly meetings is the idea that because the second book should have a wider point of view. It should have different mentalities, different cultures, different kinds of people.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's the entire driving force. So what we may do is a section of the book where we interview people, right? So they don't actually have to write anything. So we, you know, I'm trying to get people for that, because some of the people in the book are extremely well connected and could probably have access to some extremely interesting people. I would like to have a statement from Joe Biden, for instance. You know, he's a politician. He's got a good job at the moment. He's seen things in his life. I can imagine if someone close to him could manage to get 20 minutes, he would have 1 or 2 nuggets in there. Completely non-typographers, non-techno people, that kind of people. Because after all, politicians and of all ilks, including politicians that are high up in universities, they have an impact on our future, but they haven't even been asked to address the questions we're addressing.
Okay, so I love the interview portion, and happy to help with that, at least from a UX interview style. But that right there brings up what I was getting at before. And I'm sorry for hogging. I'll shut up in a moment. But
I think we all find these questions useful, so no, please.
okay, well, so you've got the future of text, which is personally inspiring and is a close kin to maybe like personal knowledge management, et cetera. But even in just that example, you've got Biden could talk about the future of media. You know, like you got text in the middle, and then on one spectrum over here, media, and then another spectrum, meaning. You know, like and the confusion between meaning and text, and so it just seems like it could very easily get out of hand, right? You don't, at least if I were the editor, I wouldn't want necessarily something around how mass comm has built out and what is the future of that, even though it does ultimately begin with the text, you know?
I think that would kind of be okay if it's a provocative enough person, because also, and this sounds a bit slimy, and I really don't know how to say it not slimy because I don't mean it not slimy, but let's say like Boris Johnson, who was our dear leader here in the UK, is a bit of a character, you know, this is recorded. Let's say he were to write a piece for this in an interview, and it would basically talk about truth shall prevail and fake news and basically have nothing to do with it. That will show the lack of knowledge of what we're dealing with in that profession. That in itself would be useful. But that doesn't mean I should have just a layperson who just wants to get an article and just write, text is very pretty, I like a cat, you know, some nonsense. But its irrelevance may itself be educational if it's from someone who is really core in something.
In a time.
My only concern with having Joe Biden make a contribution is that you'd need to have someone from the political right. Otherwise, the book would be seen as being political, and 50% of the United States population wouldn't go near it just based upon the listing of people in the table of contents.
Just remix some Q posts.
I think that's a great point, actually. What a way to hang on. People on the right don't read. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Now, yes, of course, in a political thing, it would be a very good idea to have opposing views or whatever. Same as, yes, sure.
Oh, also, could we get some non-English voices represented? Maybe someone from Japan who could talk about text in Japan versus
we're
text in America.
We are working on that. I'm doing a masterclass of my software to the University of Reading typography team, which is a very diverse and very interesting group of people. And they are also thinking about how to get some of the students to contribute and how to use their network, which is very strong in Asia. So yes, that is a very important.
I love that.
Very good.
Jumping off of that, I know one thing that I would, okay, so touching on the slimy aspect, as just a form of reality. Another truth is that a lot of people a lot of the people who buy this aren't going to have the time or the capacity to read it as thoroughly as it's intended. I am myself one of those people. I'm only about maybe 3 or 4 essays in, and I intend to finish it, right? But there's so much flying around, which is part of our reality. I would love to see not just a TLDR, but a synthesis of what is going across these essays.
Okay, so now you've jumped into the water to the kind of discussions this community has very often.
Okay.
You know, we often talk about how the articles should maybe be tagged to help people build maps and so on. And there's lots of thought in there, but my perspective on that is, so I built the Reader PDF viewer for Mac using the visual meta approach. So we have optimized the first volume of the book to be very, very quick to interact with. For instance, someone talks about QR code or whatever. You select that text to Command F, and the book now shows only all the lines in the book with that text. so
I
that you
see.
can skip around really, really quickly. So there are different things we're working on there, where even though we want to have a printed version close to being identical to the digital version, you shouldn't have to labor through page by page. You should jump around and follow
Right.
your sparks of interest.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, and that's exciting. Just for the sake of closing out and connecting it to what we're talking about with the wider cultures. In that sense, I was thinking like, well, devil's advocate or something. I would love to see maybe rather than the tagged approach, or in addition to the tagged approach, an infographic approach of sorts, right? That could or synthesize some of what's being said from other cultural angles, and kind of, I guess one of the first thoughts I had was like here's an article, and over to the top right next to the title is a 2x2 matrix that kind of fits it along, or a radar graph that says, hey, this is getting into this aspect of academic, this aspect of deep dive, and this broad application here. And so it has this sort of shape,
I like that idea, and we have actually thought about around that for 2 years. And the problem we've had, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it or keep trying, but the problem so far has been who's going to actually do that. If it is the author themselves, we're imposing an extra work burden. And if it's if it's me as an editor, then I have to make decisions. And if it's us as a community, then we have to make sure we actually bother doing that. And I see Jerry is talking about David LeBeau using highlighter. Yes. He is also doing a trip through the book for that. And I fully support that. So I can't spend time doing that because I feel it's the wrong kind of editorializing, but I would fully support the group doing that, and I would integrate that into the book properly. I'd be part of the dialogue, but I'd have to be more, you see what I mean? It gets a bit.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, in reality, it goes right to the heart of these things are so subjective that you suddenly have a gatekeeper if you insist that it looks like this, when in fact the author thinks it looks something like something else. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, Jerry, you wanted to say something?
Yes. That I think there is in June I annotate hypothesis, and I'm trying to prepare something, and I will certainly want to do some of that related to the book, and actually would like also working this decentralized sort of community wiki. So I would like to join those two together, and that could actually spread the word around, obviously, and that there's a chance of building communities there around the book. That's what I would like to do. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds, yeah. So the second volume of the book, let me just explain to you guys some of the practical problems of the first volume of the book. First volume of the book, being a mess, I just, said people contribute, and of course there were a few famous names who thankfully said yes early on, so there was a good amount of people actually contributing, so that was all good. So people would send it to me in whatever format they wanted, and I would then paste it into InDesign and do the layout there. I had help from 2 friends for a few days, so that was really good. So the book looks professional. But then the thing is, if you export a PDF to a book, it has to have a wide central margin, because otherwise you just can't read stuff that's in the gutter. But if you have it on a screen, if you have a huge central margin, the best part of the screen is wasted. So there is nothing in InDesign where you can change the margin on export, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. No, LaTeX is not my friend, Peter. No. So the problem became that every time there was a typo or any issue, we had to update 2 versions of the book. And there were many issues surrounding that, because we were also exporting to EPUB. And we're doing digital PDF, printed PDF, EPUB, and I have a feeling there was one more format, doesn't matter. It became very tricky. But for the new version of the book, I think I'm going to put everything into author. and just export it from author as one author document. Because that means that if people contribute in Word, it's much easier to help with the proofreading. Word's proofreading isn't that bad. So we're trying to streamline how the book is made, is what I'm trying to say.
How distasteful would it be to create a Rome pub version of it as well? I mentioned that only because it would certainly catch a lot of Twitter fire.
Well, Connor actually joined our Circle community, so he is aware of what we're doing.
Oh, great.
So that's nice. I think that would be perfect. I think, so here's the thing. We all own our own submissions. You know, this is not a commercial endeavor. You know, the amount of money we make from selling the printed version doesn't go anywhere near the cost for the book. And that's totally fine. That's what this is. Point is, if in an authorized way, just meaning that we've discussed it and we can link to each other, someone does a very different version of the book, I think that would be fantastic.
Wild. Okay.
So that's a message I have to reply to.
I wish there was some sort of a test bed platform with a plug-in architecture where people who want to do interesting little experiments with text could do it and leverage each other's code.
Are you talking about LaTeX now, Lambda?
No, just something higher level. Just like imagine if authors supported plugins and we could write stuff in JavaScript and leverage the author user interface, but also now have a pop-up contextual menu in author that would let us run our little different bits of code on the book.
That's not author you're talking about. I think that's reader you're talking about.
I guess, yeah, you're right. Probably more in reader would make sense.
Yeah, and you know, that's something we can discuss, because when okay, so I don't know if you all know, but I'm doing a PhD in this stuff. And I've been really shocked at how crap the literature is. You don't have to go that far back, and you can't even find authoritative versions. Look at Ted Nelson's work and so on. It doesn't, you know, the digital record rots very quickly. DNS and servers are issues. DOI helps a little bit. So that's why I'm quite militant that at least one version of the book should be possible to print. So we have to keep that in mind. And one of the reasons for doing author-reader workflow is that we've now made it so that not only can you, oh yeah, I don't know if you know this, Alan, but if you copy from an article in the book in Reader, and then you go to author and you paste that, it'll paste it as a citation automatically.
I love it.
The key is it's a citation from that contributor, not me, the editor. It knows who wrote that section. So that's in the visual meta. So we've also made visual meta now deal with endnotes and glossaries. Glossaries still have some issues, but it means that if the 6 of us now would make a document together, we could have as many endnotes as we want, and the system would automatically know where to put them. So what Peter is talking about is once we have this data stuff at the end of the document, then we can look at either extensions, plugins, or means through which scripts can manipulate the document, yes. But let's not forget, PDF is still shit. You can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, back in my law school days, if there was a legal reader that could automatically copy with a correct Blue Book citation, I would pay thousands of dollars for that.
Yeah, it is always stunning to realize how old-fashioned this section of tech is, how few advances there have been, and it seems like there are little whirlwinds of activity until we realize it's actually more complicated than we assumed, and then it goes back to the default of PDF and Word to sit for another decade.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Alan, have you really not had a presentation on visual meta?
Oh, I've seen your YouTube videos on it, and I was on one call last year with you and love it, and love the I'd love to chat more about where the applications are going, because I think you're really onto something.
Because the visual meta part of it, just to refresh, because it's very relevant, I think anyway, is at the end of a PDF, you write what the PDF is in a structured way, so that a reader can know where all the headings are and all that stuff. Was that the presentation you saw, or was it the software?
Software.
Okay, guys, can I do 5 minutes? Are you all in? Okay, I see a few bobbing heads. That's enough for me. Okay. I'm doing my masterclass production, so where is it? It should be readily available. I honestly think that this fixes at least part of the problem. There we go. Yeah, so what I'm trying to do is increase the power of the written word, making documents more interactive, the stuff we've been talking about forever. Here's the thing, by adding a few words at the end of a book or a document. So this is to build more richly interactive environments. The key is to let the documents know what they are, what they contain, how to cite them, and what the structure is. So we can have information landscapes. I'm skipping past the intro bit because you know about it. So here's a funny thing. On one of the first pages of any book, there is what's called a colophon or impressum or printer's imprint. It says who wrote the book, who printed it, and all that stuff. And here is the same kind of meta for a PDF document. It's just a joke because there's hardly ever anything there. Even though there's space for it, it isn't there. I joined the PDF Association to find out the technical reasons, and I still don't know them. It's just become very complicated. So all I've done is I've taken the kind of stuff that is on the front page in most books and written it in BibTeX style and placed it at the end of the document. So it's not a new format or a new standard, because we all know that's just another mess. It is just an existing standards employed in a novel way.
I love it. I love it.
Thanks. So the first bit just says, hello, I'm Visual Meta. Second bit is actual BibTeX, complete 100% BibTeX. Then we have the structural stuff that says this text is actually heading level so-and-so, which can be extended, and this is what we talked a minute ago, saying who the author is for that section. That will then be valid until it is replaced by another author. So part of it is metadata, but most of it is actually what I call retained structural data. It requires no effort for the user at all, but this is what's normally thrown away when you export from Word to PDF. The key thing is that the intro is actually massive. It's all this text printed small. It is a human readable explanation of what this is. So whether someone picks up a document like this on the other side of the world or in 1,000 years, shouldn't matter. Here they can read it, figure out how to use the data. We can also do semantic encoding. And we can have an appendix after the appendix to have markdown be part of this. Key benefits is advanced interactions while reading, such as being able to fold into a heading, do searches better. And then there's the augmented citing where you copy paste into a word processor like Author, and it pastes as a real citation. We're trying to make it work in Word, but finding the actual structure of how Word deals with reference is really hard. It also allows for computational text, which is Vint Cerf's term, where we can have an equation or anything else in the text, and the reader is then made aware that this is manipulatable. It surfaces to servers. If a server can read the last page, it'll know what the document is about and tables and everything. And finally, and this is the really key thing that I'm really trying to ram down everyone's throat, it's legacy safe because it's just text. It's not data inside. And it's so robust, it can be printed, scanned, OCR'd, and nothing is lost.
Have we thought about optimizing the typeface for best OCR results?
I hope OCR is so good that we don't need that now, but that's a fair point. And this is a picture of my son, just to say, doing it for better things in the future.
That's great. That's great. And the mentality behind that, is what's so refreshing. I could actually see what so many ideas on that, but I think that visual meta, that structure actually applies to even the dynamic world of personal knowledge management, right? Like most of the problems that, and I'm hoping to publish something about this pretty soon, but most of the problems I have with things like Roam that are entity-based and linking is that you lose all context of what you've linked. And so even if it were even if you had this like colophon, this visual meta at a block level where you could quickly say, this is what these references mean, you know, off screen, but they're referable, you would have far more intelligent pieces of information. I love that.
That is the whole point. I'm very glad you got that immediately, because what actually happens just between reader and author is that what goes to the clipboard is copy text plus this visual meta. And it goes like normal clipboards, it can have many different formats. That's why we hope to support Word. So that's why also, if we have something like Notion or Roam or wherever, there is a unit, and Jury is very much involved in this. You select a thing, whatever it might be, copy that and paste it into another environment. There's enough data on the clipboard to say where it came from, how it's connected, and how to use it if you put it back in the original environment, or if you take it into a new environment that has similar affordances.
Does that, so I love that. And it seems like in that case, the beginning of the life cycle is with the copy paste. Well, the beginning is formatting correctly in the visual meta in whatever scale, which enables copy paste, which adds that intelligence to wherever you want it to go. Do you have a version of search that goes all the way back around and kind of like, rather than just searching for what is manifest in the text, searching for what's underneath in the visual meta?
Have you taken my masterclass that I haven't delivered yet?
There's a version of me that has.
I think so. And this is not a compliment to me, it's a compliment to you and Doug Engelbart, because in one of the slides, I talk about what he calls basic hypertextual capabilities. And that includes not just being able to click on a link, but it means that systems should follow links as well. So the way we talked about it many, many years ago, we did a little test. I had my fancy MacBook. This was 2001, 2002. We were in his office. He was using NLS. And we said, okay, we named a mutual friend. And we said, who could most quickly find his phone number? And I did what you all know, and it took me a while. Doug didn't break eye contact. He typed in, open the document that starts with address book, scroll down till you find this person's number and copy it in one quick natural language command.
I love it.
Further in that system, it also has the ideas for take that number and email to someone, or do whatever, take this data and collate it, whatever. So Doug lived in a world where he had to invent everything, which is great if you're a genius, but it's also bad for the investment. Thank God he had Jeff Rulofson. However, he didn't have infrastructures to fight that we do. So that's why I think copy and paste is such an incredibly powerful infrastructure that we can use to make these things connect.
Whatever happened to publish and subscribe? Remember when Apple was all hot on publish and subscribe?
Yes, and OpenDoc. I remember when OpenDoc died, I was in Don Norman's office and he was so excited about it. And I was just a young, stupid student at the time. And now I'm just old and stupid. Actually, I'm a student again too, so everything applies. But anyway, I asked him, what are you going to ship as the base set? And he said, oh, that's for marketing to decide. Like, come on, Don. That's not really looking into a workflow, but anyway.
Well, I just been watching a history of Apple, and apparently when Steve Jobs got back in charge, that's the first thing he did was scrap that. He dreamed of bicycles for the mind and was eager to develop tricycles or so many training wheels that you can't move.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing which is worth mentioning, in '85, Wozniak left because the computer they produced, he wanted 8 extension points, okay, and that was not to be. And said, okay, then Thank you very much. And this is why there's nothing, no extension, you know, this is where everything is sort of disappears. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, I wanted to say something that did you say that you could actually have, of course you can now, as you said, you can have Markdown at the end, okay? Now the whole point is that there's Obsidian and so many other network thinking tools, which, or Logstash, any others, they standardize on Markdown precisely for the same reason. That you know the survivability of the text. So that actually means that yes, in Visual you can actually put in Markdown, and if you which may have things in it like trademarks, which basically can actually animate or leave instructions in Markdown to do anything fancy. So that's something I haven't considered, but I think it's really a point of convergence with the current sort of Markdown-based knowledge management tools.
Yeah, just a point on that. Totally agree. Gary, is that how to say?
Yeah, Julie, perfect. How do you? Yeah.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, hello, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah, it would be perhaps even a fun event for Future of Text, you know, either hackathon or something, but I'd love to propose just an alternative to HTML, not in the sense of JS, not in the sense of JSON or anything like that, but something that actually your description of a different, well, embedding functions and directions within Markdown is a perfect example, where Markdown goes beyond simply typographic instructions, but allows it to, trail marks, okay.
Well, I mean, trail marks is exactly that. It just got one tiny notation, which basically enables you to play this game. First in HTML hypermedia, and then if you want generate Markdown. That's exactly what you just described. It just one single, it took me 4 years to discover that that's all you need. And you can bootstrap everything from there. Yes. And 100% Markdown compatible. So I look forward to the day when Visual Meta contains some trail marks and the world is your oyster from then on. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Mr. Anderson.
Hello.
Sorry, I've been wrestling with the university's totally appalling paperwork system all afternoon. So somewhat dyspeptic at this point. Sorry I'm late.
All right. Glad you're here. Yeah, we've been going in several interesting directions. Raphael, maybe, so we have some proper time. Do you want to do a scheduled demo Monday or next Friday, or what do you think is good? Because it would be nice to have a proper introduction to what you guys are doing. It seems so related.
Yeah, definitely. I think next Friday would be a perfect time.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Very cool.
And I'll prepare a proper presentation.
Raphael, what are you working on, if you don't mind me asking? I hope you weren't going to do that today and wasn't sure what the agenda was.
We've been developing for a couple of years a platform to organize information, pretty much, but we're doing it in a visual way. And it's better to experience than to tell. So I prefer to show it next Friday, and it's going to be nice. It's very abstract. Whenever I try to explain it in words, it never works. And the way I've done it is I've always explained it in context. So I make presentations based on the context that it's going to be presented to. So I'll make something custom for this specific group.
Would your
It makes sense. What was that, Alan?
would your approach be empowered by Freud's visual meta?
No, it doesn't have actually anything to do with text. It's more visual oriented.
Okay.
I love text, and I think everything is text, but we're not doing anything with text. It's
Can't wait to see it.
come by next Friday.
Will do.
It's gonna be pretty cool.
I muted myself, right. So here's the thing worth mentioning to you guys. So I'm doing the masterclass, which is just to introduce the software to students, which is fine and nice. If you know any students who want to be presented to, just tell me. I'm also doing this Hyperlink Academy course, which is bizarre, an actual 6-week course. In that, we are using Visual Meta, Reader, and Author because it's a core part of what we're doing. So what we've done is we've made it so that when you save your author document, which is your manuscript like Word, and give it to me, all I need to do is select all, copy and paste into a new document, all the essays that everybody's written that week, export to PDF. And if you read that in Reader, it will automatically have all the endnotes, glossary items, references, all that done correctly. Plus, you can copy, as we talked about in the beginning of this chat, from any other student into your new author document to refer to them, and it's a proper citation. I think that is really cool, and I think that other teachers should be able to use that. But I think we need to go further. I think we need to look at ways where if you cite something you own meaning it's on your hard drive somewhere or cloud or whatever, it should be able to open that and to the right page or section. Because citations today are absolutely insane. Even if you have the DOI, it opens a freaking web page, right? It makes absolutely no sense. So there are ways we can do this, both for books and academic papers. But I think that as a community, it would be interesting to extend that discussion.
I haven't tried yet, but what does Reader do if it opens a BibTeX bibliography generated by a reference manager? Can it just like automatically bring all that in so I can throw away the reference manager afterwards?
So, okay, hang on. All right. This is just because I love you. This is the other bit we're working on. Really quick, few slides. We're working on kind of a library thing where when you're reading a PDF, you can do Command I or flip it, somehow get to a screen that has this stuff. So for this document, you can tag as many tags as you want. You can put it on in one virtual folder if you want. You can write notes if you want. All of this is completely arbitrary. And then when you're reading, you can do Command L for library or load or location. And then you have all of them. And you can use the folders and the tags to just go through the stuff. This is, of course, powered by Visual Meta. So that's why you have the author's name and the title of the document, not the name of the document. And if it's missing, then it'll be gray, meaning you should open that document. If Reader finds a DOI, it'll automatically resolve and give it all the Visual Meta without, it just takes half a second. We haven't built this yet. But these are the kinds of things that we are trying to do on a very, very simple level, because knowledge management should not be in someone else's pocket. This is a very, very open way to do it, because if you take these documents somewhere else, you have lost nothing. It's not like Mendeley where it's kind of owned by that database. It's not a database, it's the documents themselves. So I'm not sure if I'm going to allow you to import like that. I don't think that might be useful in this context, because if we have the document, if we have a system like this, then when you do reference something you own or read a reference that someone else has made to something you own, it shouldn't be that difficult to open it.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do something to distinguish between PDFs that have been augmented by Reader versus the original PDFs?
It's the difference between a car and a horseless carriage, right?
Exactly.
I am loath to change the document name. We could do that because that has addressability for other reasons. So that is an interesting question, Peter. But I'd have to say that this is a dream based on a proper document connected discourse that doesn't rely on location. The web is location based, which I think is very, very strange. You know, you don't link to a document, you link to a folder, and then hopefully something by that name is in that folder. Citations in academia links to a document, but only insofar as giving you the information you need to find that document, which usually will be in the library. Now would be.
Here's a crazy thought. Maybe append to the name some invisible Unicode character so that the name would look the same, but reader would be able to see that there's a zero width character on the end, so it knows that it's already touched it.
Maybe that, or maybe we do have an internal list of which documents have been touched, which have got visual meta appended to them. Because opening up the PDF and reading, visual meta is based on scanning the document from the last page. So where's the background sound? Is it you, Jerry?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay, don't worry. Yes, these are interesting issues, Peter, of how best to do that. But
If I understand correctly.
Or another possibility, what about two extensions? It could be the original file name .vm.pdf.
Yeah, that's worth looking at too.
If I understand correctly, this is like, is this like, say there's a location for a PDF online that I'm interested in and want to hold on to, but I want to notate I currently do it in Hypothesis, but that means I have to keep track of two links now, the Hypothesis link and the PDF. And this would be a way to try and resolve that?
Yes, well, my dream is to have a document-based discourse that has computer-provided affordances such that you may write a document, share it with this group, and then Mark Anderson may choose to write a riposte to your PDF, publish it, and there will be mechanisms where they will know about each other, but it's not based on being on gosh darn server. It's just, this exists somewhere. Here's a reply. Are you interested?
This is beginning to sound like Xanadu.
Yeah, right. Finally realized it. Freud, you mentioned that it's odd that HTML is location based. At some point, I'd love to hear more about, or just the thought experiment of if Ted Nelson was going to, I know he was working on Solid, right? And I know we have this legacy of 30, 40 years of HTML type thinking. But given today's infrastructure, given today's cloud, and even the UX and UI patterns we've invented that weren't around back then in the 90s, what would a clone of Ted Nelson do?
I don't know, because even though Ted is a close friend, I don't understand a word of his specifics. I understand more of his mind-expanding general concepts. But I honestly think that we have to look at what is fragile, and that is really this whole location-based nonsense. Right? I mean, yes, sorry, Jerry, please jump in.
Yeah, I just want to say, well, if you check out Trailmarks and Minecraft and everything around there, that's exactly what I'm building. Everything. Yes. Because it's all IPFS, it's content addressable. And in fact, with Trailmarks, it becomes intent and meaning addressable. And you can actually have that conversation. And I just did the sort of end-to-end first slice for this sort of IPFS phishing-based web native thing, which is I call IndieWiki, which is basically a wiki, but it's basically every person in that network is actually owns its own stuff and can exchange it in this sort of interpersonal way. So it's no server. That's the whole point of Fission Web Native, is that all you need is a browser. So actually with Fission and OBDB, and we are building Xanadu.
I'd like to understand the abstractions of that and apply it in that, going back to the Ted Nelson thought experiment, going beyond a product. What does the at scale solution look like? But Freud, go ahead.
Well, that's the whole, the point of Fission is to basically common base pre-production of software in the browser. So all you need is client technology, no servers. And I'm building on top of that communication infrastructure, which enables people to actually collaborate, so that just as you described. So Mark can actually take any bit and then add his comments, and his comments are actually added to a shared document. So
that is
that's
a very,
possible.
very powerful and useful and good parallel approach. They are very different, which I think is very good. And I think that's where the copy and paste comes into it. But so I know we're being recorded. It's a bit ridiculous, but since we're amongst friends. So one of my advisors for my PhD, Dave Millard, wonderful guy, as Mark will testify, he tried to put the research that I'm doing into context. And he said that I'm basically trying to make academia digital without all the crap that's come along since it actually started.
Yes.
Which is and I'm not saying I will ever do that, but yes, that is exactly my goal. So the goal is that in social media and live chat, it goes into the ether. In academia, the point is you spend time, you compose a paper, let's call it paper, even though it's a ridiculous joke to calling it a paper. And then someone has the opportunity to compose their thoughts and reply to that paper. That is basically academia in a nutshell. So how can we do that in the most robust way that is also possible to have the innovations that Jury is talking about, that you're talking about, that Ted's talking about? I really feel, and this has been Cerf, not to name drop, because you all know him as well, is his breathing down my neck for years now about the importance of deep archivability. You know, he's a bit older than us even. He's seen more things rot away. The very first digital text on a screen, no one knows when that was. I know the building, I know the machine, but I don't know who did it. It's crazy that we can't do that research. So that's why I personally think that an approach like visual meta, that takes the meta and treats it on the same level as the body, so to speak, is the way to do it. The way we're doing it, I don't know. This has to be a community thing. If it changes completely beyond recognition, I don't care. But to say in the document, this document contains X, Y, Z in this graph that has the value so-and-so. And by the way, this other bit comes from Trailgraph, which has these values, which actually mean this. Say it in human language, then below say it in computer language. It means that any software developer, AI or human, can open that, parse it, and make a new magic reader that is far beyond anything we've thought about.
So devil's advocate, even though I don't feel this way at all, but going back to that first statement, the very first text on the screen, no one knows what that is, right? I love that way of framing it. And we all know that systems get distorted over time with greater use. Maybe that explains a little bit why the current PDF colophon, is completely, doesn't even attempt to capture meaning or semantics, because once you open that up, I mean, you could have another PDF within a PDF in a sense, right? Like our desire for granularity knows no bounds. And so I wonder if that might become an issue. At what point in visual meta would you say you've done too much recording of the thing itself, describing of the thing itself, that it's no longer useful? And where I was thinking with the very first text on the screen, you could potentially have so much code, which is a documentation, describing what would have appeared on the screen, that it's no longer useful to just see what's on the screen anymore because it has this backlog. That doesn't really make sense.
Well,
If we get to that state with visual meta, I will die happy.
no.
Let me explain
Yeah.
why. Let me explain why. It's really, really important that if visual meta is followed in the spirit in which it was designed, all of these bits will say what they are.
That's exactly.
Yeah. So for one example is, I'd like to have an extension that talks about place. So, you know, maybe you're walking with a device and you write, I am having coffee here, and you want the here to be noted into the system. So that in visual meta, it actually codes, you know, Wimbledon, England, or whatever granularity I as the author choose. It may also then encode coordinates, but it has to say what these coordinates are based on. Otherwise, it's not useful visual meta. It has to expect that people who are reading it will have no clue and will need that context.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me with visual meta and thinking back to the conversation that in a sense led to it, is the thing that it's a reflection on the fact that we're still thinking in paper and working in digital. So the visual meta is a very pragmatic approach. It's actually, it's describing something that is a very digital concept. Everything should be dereferenceable, so you can use whatever whizzy future system you have to get back to the stuff. But we don't know what that standard is yet. So we're making something that's at least readable. And until we've got ourselves out of PDF being the sort of de facto standard as a retention form, then it travels along. I mean, to me, that's the beauty of the pragmatism of it.
Yeah,
It seems weird that we're doing, in a sense, we're doing the really interesting digital part in text at the back of a PDF. But my view is, if it works, well, that's damn good.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant.
Well, actually, PDF now is obviously once it's got links in it. So, Alan, what you just said, that yes, you can have infinite PDF within the PDF. All you need to do, have a link to another PDF.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be enclosed.
I don't like
Sorry? No. If the links are content addressable links, not to the web, but to real to
I'm smiling, Jerry, when I'm saying that. I just mean that the idea of addressing is huge, and you know, we need to do exactly what you're working on and address. We should be able to say something, and it's in the document on the pile over there, or a DOI, or the blockchain thing, or whatever.
So one last little bit here to Mark, it's a great point. And of all of the ideas I've heard in the last 4 years, this one is like the most pragmatic, undeniable, good step forward. 100% agree with that. What can I do, or what are you doing? What are other people doing to popularize this or force this conversation to be had?
The answer, first of all, thank you. And secondly, Vint Cerf and Ismail Sergeldin have been insane. When with this particular idea stands on the shoulder of giants, it's literally them carrying it like a pharaoh. The most recent presentation was at the Summit of the Book, which was a very prestigious event. I didn't know that the roundtable, which was Ismail, Vint, and me, was essentially them telling everybody how great visual meta is. It was the entire thing. It's recorded. It's just crazy. So there are some people who get it and are working on it. Todd Carpenter at NISO also gets it, and he's trying to integrate it into NISO, meaning National Institute Standards Organization, something like that. He's also being very positive in trying to get it in places, because it isn't a thing until it is used, obviously. And author and reader are technology demonstrators. This is not a proprietary thing. It's the most open thing that could be imagined, because it's self-describing. So the second half of that is, what can everyone do? Find somewhere to stick it. Don't forget, author does it automatically, but the Future of Text book was actually published in InDesign. The visual meta was manually created. It's not hard to do.
Okay.
It did occur to me, because I know, obviously, for good reason, because of the stuff you're doing with author, and you know, the focus is on academic stuff. But it occurred to me, thinking back to my sojourn up in the Cabinet Office, that was getting this perhaps also into large organisations, like public organisations, like sort of government and things, because another aspect of this is having more resilient archival. I mean, I happened to go to London at a time where I actually watched the first digitally native documents arrived at the disposal chain, and well, we're being recorded. So, but anyway, there were problems.
I can pause it a little bit.
because my other observation is most people haven't been trained, and it's sort of too techie for them to go and fill out boxes. But we can beat the humans at their own game by preserving it another way.
Mark, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that. The visual meta, the name is horrible because it took me a while to realize it's hardly about metadata in the historical sense. There's only a tiny bit about who you are in the name of the document. Most of it is structural metadata that it has to be there in the digital manuscript to exist. So it's not about adding stuff. It's mostly about not throwing away.
You should have called it permadata.
That's
Syntax of a markdown.
Permadata is a great name. I like it.
Which one?
Permadata?
Permadata, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mark, to your point, like that part is exactly what I'm talking about. So, and I guess I'm almost referring to the cultural blind spot. So a lot of what visual meta reminds me of is adding alt tag descriptions for images in Twitter, which if you are inclined and feel that that is valuable, you will take some time and write that, even though there's no, I'm sure I'd love to see some sort of like etiquette, or standards. This is how you should describe X, but we don't have that. That's fine. Just doing it is something. But whereas most people, there's a lot more excitement around an idea of like multiplayer code bases or knowledge management things where you don't realize that you're actually creating worse problems downstream, but the feeling is that's the superpower. How do you get the conversation to move to, no, the superpower is in this incredibly, sorry for boring, pragmatic idea of stating what you mean so that it can live in perpetuity, not this sexy, we can talk immediately back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, for the record, I think one of the things is, the answer to that is, one of the drivers is who did the deed, because we're almost there's an opening delta at the moment. We've got digital record systems or writing systems, be it Microsoft Office or Google Cloud or whatever, where you can run a scrubber up and down the edits, but it's a bit like a Wikipedia page. They're all just edits. There is no, the computer can't do anything useful. It can only provide you with what you tell it and what you're asking. So in other words, each party is asking the other one to tell it the significant fact. So it's finding a way to start seeding into things. It's almost going back to the thought that we had, and I grew up in paper management systems and weeding dockets and things, and it was something you learnt to do. And looking back, it's amazing how rich the structure is, and indeed a lot of academic work is built on the fact that that's gone on for a long time. But we've just thrown a lot of that out with the bathwater when it's come to digital systems, because of its affordance and the fact we can have it everywhere all the time. It's lulled us into a sense that our knowledge at the moment will be as persistent, and I think we've already proved that that's actually not the case.
I'm going to pause the recording for a bit. For the post recording, I was just talking about my own company issues with this stuff.
That makes me wonder, as an angle for a larger conversation, I love what you mentioned, and a lot of this feels like it's in the spirit of DARPA. It's in the spirit of not the bad parts of DARPA, I guess, but the idea that we could pursue technology when there wasn't corporate interest, when it was just, here's a bucket of money, and at some point in 5 years, you need to be able to solve a missile crisis, and how you do it, you figure it out. And this seems to be closer to that mentality, which we absolutely don't have anymore. But I think there's a huge groundswell of people that want that kind of thinking back, because we've been having the benefits of that now for 40 years, and we're chafing against the selfish interests of corporations, right? So maybe there's an angle to it there, that linking visual meta to that.
You work for a document-related company, Twilio. What do you actually do?
I don't. It's not a document-related company.
it is a telecom. Its initial, I love its initial problem that it solved, which is that for a startup, they wanted to send updates via SMS, and going through the, I'm sure academia is much the same, but going through the legalities and all of the work of telecom was incredibly difficult. So they did the hard work of working through that and then abstracted it into APIs for developers to use. That led to, I would think, I mean, I don't know any official docs, but that seemed to lead to a cultural shift, because suddenly startups could do things that weren't possible before, which was communicate via SMS, communicate anonymously. So that enabled things like Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, et cetera. Twilio is the platform underneath that. And that's the flavor of products and services that are provided. I would love to see it tackle documentation and knowledge, but right now it's mainly those channels.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool company. It's wild though, getting so terrifyingly close to the eye of Sauron, which is telecom. But we're being recorded, so I'll for now.
And if I pause recording, it'll go on too long. Yes, I know the issue.
I
Trends in the
put,
industry.
put a link to the chat. If Frode, if you could play, this is Mark telling what he was describing 4 years ago. Well, yeah, 4 years
thank you.
ago. It's a really great one. Please listen to that one.
Will do.
I will click and pause so I remember to watch it after. Okay, well, we're way over today, guys. And
Yeah, okay.
thank you.
Sorry, I'm late. One of those days.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You just missed lots of good stuff.
Well, as ever, you know, existential nightmare again.
But if you think of ways to use the circle thing more by putting questions or dialogue, the design is something we've done here as a group. Raphael has been very, very proactive helping form it.
Yep.
If you guys think things should be moved around or stuff, feel free to.
I did, on that note, I did have a sort of quick question. I was sort of wondering where I should put something, because I was actually where we ended sort of last time with Alan's comments and thinking about, you know, how we capture sort of fuzzy connections, but has very much stayed with me. And I was sort of thinking I ought to put this somewhere, and I rumbled around the site thinking where to put it, and then something happened and I never got around to it. And that's not to sort of speak ill of the structure. It's just more my confusion of thinking, well, there are so many places I could put it where that should be. You know, maybe it's in relation to the weekly chat. I don't know.
I think the ideas and discussion is a good place. What do you guys think? You know, random thoughts and, hey, we should do this or whatever, but yeah. But everyone have a great weekend.
Oh, one thought. Do we have anyone from Strumenta lined up for the book? They're a company that specializes on building domain-specific programming languages for outside clients.
No, I'm just
What's the name?
Yeah, what is it called?
Strumenta?
Can you put it in chat?
Let me see if I can find the website and I'll paste the link. 1 second.
how can I
Just
not
the spelling
know?
of it.
I don't know Hugh McGuire or Peter Mayers. This is really bizarre. 62
Okay,
pounds. Okay.
Okay, here we are.
I'll have a look at both of those, at least the Kindle version, of course. Thank you for those. Are those people?
I don't know. Just, yeah.
No.
Just a sentence.
Okay, I found one link from them. You can back up from there to the rest of their website.
I don't know whether you know that you can actually annotate YouTube videos. That's a link, and from that you find the program. I mean, it's amazing. Because if you annotate, you can find it later, you know.
Right.
Okay, so then the official link for their site is strumenta.com. Let me paste that in. Okay. Yeah, so they had a very interesting little piece. They wrote up a guide to using the Antler parser generator system And one of the things they put out was the term island languages to refer to chunks of parsable text that are embedded in some larger document in a completely different format that it could care less about. So instead of having to try to parse the overall document that the DSL is located in, you only recognize at the lexing level, we're entering a chunk of the DSL, parse it, and ignore everything else around it. So that was a very interesting thought. And maybe we get somebody from there to talk about the machine reading of text for the next volume.
Great idea. Definitely
Okay.
need to touch on where machines come into play.
Peter, may I mention that my thesis was language-oriented programming in Metalist in '92, and actually I'm the first one who actually talked about language-oriented programming. So, yeah.
Oh, do you have a digital copy of?
Yes. If you check,
I'd love to read that.
If you got Wikipedia, or I send you the link anyhow.
Great.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it's
definitely like to read
it's
that work.
LaTeX generated stuff, so it's not
I'm
very
afraid-
copy
I'm
friendly.
afraid I have
or
to go,
anything.
but you
Yeah.
guys are doing some communication stuff, so I will love you and leave you and let this run for a little while. I look forward to.
Well, I have to head out anyhow too, so.
I also
got
have to
go too,
dash,
yeah,
but
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll try and be on time Monday.
Hope
Yeah,
to
see you Monday, guys.
Next week.
when you can.
See you
Bye
then.
bye.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.